Good evening.
So as you heard, my name is Rabbi Druin. I live in Miami. At least when I'm home. I travel about 48 weeks a year. Literally every week I'm somewhere else on the planet, every single week. And I've been a sofer now for 43 years. I'm married. That's one of my greatest achievements. I am blessed with 11 children. Wow. Now that's another great level of achievement. We're already blessed with 24 grandchildren. Since you don't know them, I will say there's 4 on the way. Still a secret between everyone else. And I have an incredible passion over and above my family, and that's Torah and teaching about Torah. So I'm going to give you just a little rundown, a little bit about myself and what we're doing here, and then we'll talk a little bit more, as we say in Yiddish, tachlis, a little bit more practicality, what you guys can be doing and learning and really getting a little bit more hands-on. So we know that in the Torah there are 613 mitzvot, right? The last grand finale mitzvah proclaims that every Jewish man, woman, and child have an obligation in their lifetime to write Torah. And that is the mitzvah in itself. The interesting thing is that while most mitzvot, honor your parents. Yes, I gather you can hire someone else to honor your father or mother, but the mitzvah is really incumbent on you to actually do that. So similarly, we know that, let's use the word traditionally, Torahs are not written by the average Joe, but rather it's someone called a sofer, a scribe, and they write it on our behalf. And then when we're lucky and when we're capable of helping and writing a letter, we say, "Oh, I did it." Who are you fooling? Or are you really fooling? Maybe not. So the truth is, this mitzvah has really very unique concepts to it, and from there really will spill out into what we're going to be doing and talking about Torahs and care for Torah. So, my father was also a scribe, and he always loves to say, he says, a scribe does not write letters, and a Torah is not a book. And he says, and I'll prove it to you. He says, when was the last time you picked up a math book, and when you were finished with it, you closed it and gave it a kiss? You don't kiss math books. Okay, forget that one. How about a novel? A beautiful 987-page novel, and after finishing it with a bang at the end, you so gently closed that novel, and you gave it a big hug, and danced around the room with it. That's also something we don't do. And yet, what do we do with our Torah? We kiss, we hug, and we dance. But the obvious question is, who do we hug? Who do we embrace? So you answer, and I'm assuming you would also agree, someone who you love, right? You don't go and hug chairs. I appreciate my chair. I am very grateful for holding me up for all these hours, but it's not that relationship. We embrace someone who we love, and yet we're kissing and hugging Torah. So where's this relationship? That's what we're trying to go at. So obviously, one can, on a very superficial level say, has your parents or your child, have we done something for those who we love in the last 5 minutes? No. So why do you still love them? Maybe they did something for you 10 minutes ago. What if they didn't? Do you still love them? How about if they didn't do anything for you for the last 6 months? That's it. 6 months, no more love. What do you mean? But they did a year ago. What happens if it was only 2 years ago? What happens if you can't even remember? So what happens is that love is a very unique kind of a relationship. Objects don't understand that. Animals to a certain degree. But we develop a feeling towards something, and here's the key, that has done something for us. So the moment someone has done something for us, even once, we start to have a good feeling, fuzzy feeling towards that person. When it repeats itself, especially when it's uncalled for, or when it's least expected, now it's starting to increase. So what has the Torah done for you lately? Today, yesterday, a month ago, a year ago? And if the answer is I can't ever remember, so why do you still love your Torah? So now we're going to try to help add maybe different dimensions of understanding why we love our Torah, and also at the same time, now what can we do to embrace the Torah in return? When we're little babies, and all we're doing are the top 3 things, right? That child does not deserve to be loved. If anything, they're keeping you up all the time. They smell horribly, and they yell and they scream. What are you loving them for? And yet, there's a certain part, as we come to understand, that a relationship has different dimensions. And it's not only because I'm receiving something, but sometimes it could be future. Sometimes it can be representing. And I'm using all these metaphors because really this is about what we're going to be talking about here. So what is this Torah? This Torah starts with something, as those who were here earlier, we spoke about the word ot, which means these are the letters, which they're not only letters, because if they were only letters, you wouldn't kiss it, you wouldn't hug it. You don't kiss books as a concept. Letters in Hebrew is the word ot. The word ot, back into English, has many more meanings and translations. Amongst them is the word sign. Ot is a sign, it's a guide, it's a direction, it's an advice. It gives you good information, especially when you can be confused. Am I going this way or that way? Go that way. Thank you. Okay? I think one of the greatest things is with that, when one can feel the sense of being lost. It's a horrible feeling. If you're driving and you're lost, if you lost it, and when someone can shed light and guide you, that appreciation. So this Torah is that sense of light. Ot in Hebrew also means wonder. Without the drama that I did for the students, the concept of wonder is really when something can take away your breath. And when you get so excited you have no words, you can't express yourself. In fact, as a side note, would you know the difference between a miracle and nature? What would be a distinctive difference between a miracle and nature? And the answer is actually somewhat very simple. Nature is a miracle that happened for the second time. The first time you went, wow! The second time, oh, big deal, it's nature. Suddenly, when things keep on repeating, oh, no big deal. But that first time, it's a wow. So here's a bit of a scary thought. If you're not saying wow about it, it's not the fault of the concept, the object, the situation. It's us falling into a trap. But when you realize that it's so unbelievable, even after the first, the second, the third, the fifth, that's enough. That's what this Torah is meant to be. It's meant to be that every time we come into contact with it, we lose our breath. We say, wow. The last translation of the word ot is magic. You are now present next to Jewish magic. Okay? This is really why you are here, Rabbi's here, I am here, and the world still can't get over it. That there's something there. Not always can we put a finger on it. But despite all odds, again and again and again, they thought it was only once at Purim. Here we are once again, defying all odds. Against our size, our capability. Here we are. So this is the Torah. So what are we doing here? So my job as a sofer is primarily most scribes in the world. Their job is to write. There are 4 objects that a sofer writes. It's Torah, Tefillin, Mezuzah, and Megillah. And did I say Tefillin? Just making sure we went through so quickly on that. And yet there's a 5th element. Most scribes do not proceed onto that level of knowledge, and that is how to become a conservator, how to become someone who can actually restore old ancient scrolls. There's really only a few handful of us who are trained in the art of restoration. And I believe who we are, I think we're really the only ones in the world who travel. Because, face it, if I have a studio or a workshop or whatever, you want to have your Torah fixed, send it to me. But to get up, leave everything, lech lecha, and to travel to the Torahs is a very unusual, opportunity, experience. So what I'm doing here is not necessarily writing anything, but rather making sure that Torahs work, that every piece is still functioning correctly, the way it was intended to be, so the magic can really have its impact. From a practical point, Torah is really, in a certain way, somewhat very, I don't use the word plain, but it has very few ingredients. There's animal skin, right? The hide primarily from the cow, but it could be sheep, goat, and so on. Even deer skin. And the way the parchment is made often has a difference in how you care for it. We'll talk about that in a minute. Then there's going to be the ink that we use for writing the Torah. And while ink, you can go today anywhere and get the list of all the ingredients. It's not necessarily only the ingredients that make it so unique, but it's rather the quantities of each of these ingredients and how you brew it. And that's a secret that only a few families in the world have knowledge of, and I'm not one of them. And one of the primary elements of this ink is that when you use a pen and write on paper, the ink penetrates the material that you're writing on. And that's its connection with the material. With parchment and ink, it's slightly different. The ink does not seep through, it does not penetrate the parchment. And actually almost like adhesively glues itself to the parchment very tightly. And if you would feel it, you would actually feel there's little very delicate mounds of the ink on top of it. So it's separate from the ink, from the parchment, yet very closely attached to it, which will have now a significance of what's going on here. Last but not least is going to be the feathers that we use. There we are. There again, it has to be from any kosher bird. So you can use ducks, goose, chickens, doves, but we use turkey feathers. They happen to be the largest, very sturdy. I cut my own feathers, make them into feather pens. And it takes about a year to write, with a lot of devotion, a lot of sitzfleisch, as they say in Yiddish. You got to sit and sit and sit. Very little time to smile or breathe or eat or anything else. And yet, what can go wrong with the Torah? In fact, the ultimate question is, if a Torah is written, and it's written properly, with no issues, and it was checked and certified that it's all good, how long should a Torah last? About. I mean, just being fair. 50 years, 100 years, let's throw 200 years. How about 300? And the answer is actually that as long as you can take care of the Torah properly, it has the potential and ability to last forever, which is so unusual. The oldest Torah that I personally have worked on is a Torah out of Dallas Temple Emmanuel. They have a Torah that was written in Venice just shy of 800 years ago. Cool. And I am honored to be able to go, and every so many years we take it out. So on the outside it looks like, oh, frail. You open it up, the ink is shiny black like you can't believe. One of the very miraculous Torahs that were able to pass the test of time and come through. Now, most Torahs, unfortunately, do not fare in that way. So what goes wrong? So two primary things, and that has to do with both the parchment and the ink, and then ultimately how it's used. The ink has, as I mentioned, its basic ingredients, how it's made, thickness and all. Now, with time, ink could dry out. It can start to crack, crumble, fade, and in fact even get rubbed off, flake off. So often sofrim, scribes, to prevent that from happening, so rather than using thick ink, where it makes a beautiful, gorgeous mound, so when you look at it, it has like a richly thickness to it, that can often crack and fade and dry out. So to avoid that drying out, they dilute it a lot. And so now it's a much thinner layer on top of the parchment. The flip side to that is that with time, now that ink can turn brown. It starts to dry out in a different way, and that's when you get letters that are browning, start to fading, and disappearing. Either one of those issues, one can solve it by regular maintenance. I think it's been a plague, especially after the Holocaust. I believe this is where, I don't think it was as bad prior to, but obviously we had the Holocaust, and then 50s, the 60s, 70s, we were just trying to cope with so many other things in the world. As a result, Torahs were somewhat neglected, thinking they were kosher back in 1955 when we got it. But now it's 1979, and now it's 1980, and communities started to notice that letters are cracking, letters are peeling. If you look in here, you'll have sections that are practically rubbed off completely. And what do? So often what would happen is that they would bring in a sofer, and the sofer would give the quote, and sometimes they would even, in fact, at that time, fix all of them. But then communities would go into a euphoria that, oh, our Torahs are good, and then wait, 5, 10, 50, and then, whoa, what's going on? It's happening all over again. And being in this cycle for now, for 40 years, and seeing how we would fix, and then after 5, 10 years, we were coming back again. And communities would say, we haven't done anything wrong. We just used it. Why can't we maintain? Why can't it be contained and stay? And that's where this maintenance plan, which we were talking about, to make sure that once a Torah is fixed, on a regular basis of once every year or two, we can come in and maintain all the little issues, so it's never more than that. But what can you do? Because at the end of the day, you're the ones handling your Torahs every single week. Here's what we do. There's a few things that are very, very important. I did not mention the stitching. I have one thing of threads there. Here's another one. So the sheets are not glued together. They're actually stitched together. It's a seamless stitch, so the stitch is on the outside, and then on the inside, you can't see it, it's seamless on the inside. Now, it's not a thread, it's the sinew, it's animal gut from a kosher animal. Back in the day, I'm sure if you remember, they used to make tennis rackets out of cat gut, right? So this is cow gut. Okay. Now, with time, it can wear out, it can stretch, they need to be fixed. However, probably, okay, backtrack one moment. If someone stopped you in the street and said, Torah, what's the number one ingredient that it needs for longevity? What would you say? Well, okay, that's okay. You trumped me on that one. Okay, but practically,
conditions of air and
humidity. The answer is actually very simple: oxygen, air. It needs air. When the Torah is just rolled up, and often I come to a place and the community says to me, oh, you see that Torah on the second shelf? We haven't opened it up in 10 years. That Torah is going to have problems. It needs to breathe because it's organic. It's animal skin. It needs to breathe. In fact, Maimonides, you all heard of that one? Or that person for that matter? He made a very, very powerful statement about Torah care. But it actually came around from a left field Jewish law. He was talking about the laws of guardianship. You know, if I give you something to watch for me, what's your responsibility? You know, if I give you a little dog, my special little dog, right? I say, I'm going away for a year. Can you watch my dog? And you say, Rabbi, have no fear. See the drawer over here? Hold on. Open the drawer, put the dog inside, lock the thing, the key's on top. And I come back a year later, and you say to me, I never touched it! When you receive something to watch, it comes with responsibilities that you accepted to do. And it goes through some examples, and then he says, what happens if someone gives you a Torah to watch? And that could be on an individual basis or a synagogue. So now you have a Torah to watch. So if you turn and say, oh, don't worry about it. Here's the drawer. Here's the key. A year later, I never touched it. Maimonides says, you have defaulted on your guardianship. And any deterioration of the scroll is your fault. And you're responsible for it. Why? Because it needed to breathe. And he concludes and says, the best practice for a Torah, and I know this is a piece of new information, one should roll the Torah once every 30 days. And I'm not talking about reading Bereshit, opening it up, reading up one or two sheets, closing and putting it. No. I'm talking about rolling out the scroll. Oh. 1 month, you do it this way. You can roll it to that side. The next month, you go do it this way. Okay. Every other month, you do halfway this one. Next. The point is, it needs to breathe. It needs air. And by doing that, you are giving the Torah 30,000 miles just like that, without any calculation. It gets extra life just by rolling. Here's a fun little piece. If the Torah is holy and you're rolling it, what does it make you? So the name actually of the program of taking care of Torahs is the Holy Rollers Torah Care Program. Where really the first thing before you know anything and what to do and how to do is simply to roll the Torah and let it breathe. In fact, one of the reasons why whenever I come in to start working, the first thing I do is I roll out the Torah. I'm just now giving it that extra air. I feel the Torah saying, thank you. Okay. Now, rolling the Torah itself How it's done is also very important. This is something that you all can do. Number one, Torah should be rolled firmly and tightly, not loosely. In fact, here's a classical example of when the Torah was not rolled properly and not tightly. You see the crease over here? You see that? There's a crease here. So what happened was, when it came time to roll the Torah, they rolled it and it bent itself in, and now we have cracks on the letters, the seams are coming apart. Rolling the Torah properly means that it's going to be, this is how we do it. One pinky under, you hold like this, and you pull, and you give it. Now this is firm. You'll notice how nice and even it is on both sides. Now surely, when you do Hagba and starts to slip, it's not always going to end up exactly the way you want it. But whoever's got by, whoever's checking every week or two, just go and give it a nice little, so it's nice and firm. That will keep the seams in line, because if you have other Torah, I'm not sure if we're going to take a look at this when I started taking care of it already. But come and take a look at the problem over here. Okay? So first of all, the size of the Torah is all the same. So if it's 17 inch, it's 17 inch everywhere. But if you have a part of the Torah that's down here, and another part of the Torah that's over here, that means it's not rolled up together. And now you're putting extra stress on the seams. Well, not only that, but in fact, because we said that the ink is not permanently inside the parchment, it's only somewhat adhesively glued onto it, when you have that friction, that's where it starts to crack. Okay, so just the rolling made the whole difference of a Torah lasting comfortably and correctly versus starting to show signs of deterioration. So the number one is to make it as you're seeing here. Now another problem, I'm going to slightly divert on this one. What happens is that we have these poles, right? These plates rather. Now, when you have this plate down here, when the clock is down, here's the plate, this is meant to be interlocked. So here, it's going to go nice and beautiful. But here, it's rubbing against it. Often what will happen now, and this Torah I already started seeing it, you do it once, twice, 10, 100 times, you're starting to get rips and tears. And I think 30% of all the time when I go to places, they're calling us out saying, we have a big rip, it's gone into the letters, fix it. It would not have happened had this not started the little tears to begin with. Because why should a scroll tear in the first place? Unless you just kept on putting that endless pressure on it. As a result, when I roll a Torah, you will never see ever the parchment ever touching this plate. This plate was never destined to hold the parchment. It was just meant to be there as a guard so it doesn't fall when you do Hagba. Furthermore, this Torah is not much of an issue because the actual scroll is nice and light. This one's a little bit heavier. I think the other one over here, we're going to have a big issue with this one. Here, this last one over here. You see how all these plates are loose? The weight of a Torah, okay? Each pole has holes in it, right? So there's a whole story about these poles. It's a separate thing, right? Okay, but either way, the weight of the Torah is evenly divided on this pole. This is what's meant to hold the weight of the Torah. When you have the whole scroll sitting down and on the actual plate down here, that means that the weight of that whole Torah, which could be 15 pounds, 20, is sitting on this plate. So the first sign of the pole going, it starts to get out of place. The next time you'll be calling me and say, our pole snapped. Why? Because of that weight. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, sitting in the ark forever and ever, it snaps. Back to what I was saying, that's why I will never have the scrolls actually rolled and touching the plate itself. You should always be able to get at least a set of fingers here. This is just a little bit too big anyway for the scroll, but regardless, this is only here to be able to support if it starts to slide when you do Hagba, but surely not to have the scroll rolled onto either side.
Rabbi,
yes.
What's your recommendation on the guards that go around the bottom?
Okay, so I was getting to that.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Now, what happens is, go back to this one. Okay. So what happens here now? So let's say we understand now that this should not be down here. We're going to roll it properly, and the whole scroll is going to be. Get it up here properly. A little bit. Okay. So now we're going to have the scroll. It's going to be nice and properly rolled. Okay. And now it fits, as you can see, it can fit on this side, and it fits beautifully here. And this plate is not rubbing against the parchment. So good. But what happens now? We did hot. Okay? And then they put it back in and it slipped. Right? I mean, it can happen. So what am I supposed to do? I mean, I need them. So now, I don't think any of your scrolls have them. I have one. I always remove sample. Basically, there's all new sets of poles today come with one extra feature that none of your Torahs here have. It's called a Torah guard. It's a little thin piece of wood, literally about this big, and there's a hole in the middle. The whole thing is cut in half, but basically you separate the two halves, you attach them, two little screws, and it sits as a little floater right over here. So it floats around, but what will happen now, and it becomes the same size as this plate over here, so even if it would slip, it's always holding it so not to come on. So that's a Torah guard that can be applied practically to every single Torah pole out there. And again, it just gives such extra longevity to a Torah because it prevents it from falling down, again causing that friction on the seams and on the letters and so on. But it all begins with rolling. Now, there are different ways to roll a Torah. Probably the most common and the best way to do it is you have one person on that side, one person on this side, and usually a third person, a spotter. Now, when we're doing a rollout like this, I'm doing it slightly different because I'm by myself here, so I'm rolling it out and then I roll it back. However, when you're having two people or three people, for that matter, to be able to roll it, so one is going to be releasing, and the other one is rolling it together. Now, the purpose of the spotter, at the end of the day, I remember someone came in here, they weren't feeling well, someone wasn't feeling well earlier, and it started with a sneeze, and it started with a cough, and it gets worse and worse, right? We all know that the best way to take care of yourself is as soon as you see the signs, you start taking the chicken soup, you start taking the medicine, don't wait until you're already now in the hospital, God forbid, okay? So similarly, when it comes to the Torah, why wait until the problem was big? So if we're just rolling it and you're not really giving any effort of time on the script and the scroll itself, in Hebrew we call that almost slightly a bracha levatala, like a wasted opportunity. You had an opportunity to really see it and you lost it. So therefore the spotter, their job is just as it's rolling, you can say, stop, well, let me see this. And we have different charts that if you see a problem, if you see a little tear developing, if you see a smudge, which we'll talk about in a minute, make notes of that. So whether when the sofer comes, or if it's really big, make sure we don't read that section. Let's use a different scroll until it's fixed. Whatever it is, it's to identify the problems when they're still very, very small versus they've expanded and so on. So that's really the three. Now, as I said again, I'm going to be fixing this still. I'm going to be stretching this out a bit so we don't have this fold anymore. This one really was folded like very on itself for too long of a time, and it really did cause a lot of cracking of the letters over here, which I've already fixed it, so it's already dry. But I'm going to be rolling it properly so that hopefully with time it will come out. There's another one very important concern that, again, it's something that happens naturally. It's no one's fault directly, but it happens. And that is that often when one is reading or just simply having idle talk over a Torah, we tend to spit a little bit. Well, it as it is, right? Okay. And the problem is that even if you felt that, and you look around, you can't see anything because it's clear. But that liquid, because the letters are water-based, it's going to dry on there. It's going to start to smear. Now it starts to dilute the texture of the ink. That ink now, once it dries out, becomes like a powder. That powder now starts to rub against other letters. That's when you start getting the mother of all problems. It just starts from a little smudge that dried out, and now it starts to rub like sandpaper against other letters. Leave it for 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, and you're giving a sofer a lot of work. Okay, so the number one is that it's a constant reminder that whether it's conversations, whether it's the Mishabeirachs, whatever, make sure the Torah is closed and so on. And even when students are, if you feel like you have to sneeze or you feel like something's collecting in your throat, move aside. It's that awareness. I don't think it's possible to completely avoid it, and that's why the maintenance is to catch it earlier and more regularly than waiting for a long time, and that little spit mark now made tremendous damage throughout the whole scroll. But surely that awareness that you're standing over Torah, 12 words of Torah, if you're not, move aside, so you're more in conscious awareness of where you are and in what presence you have to be. So that's another very important thing to be aware of. I'm going to add another piece of information here, and that is what you were probably seeing earlier, and that's these things here. Okay? These in Hebrew are called matlesim. It looks like a Band-Aid. It's not, similar to a Band-Aid. They are pieces of parchment. And the reason we use them is because anything of any texture or whatever that we make, how strong is any object? It's as strong as its weakest spot. Right? So what's the weakest spot of a Torah? It's the seams. And what's the weakest spot within the seam? It's where you start and end the stitching. Right? You made a little knot there. And often when we have those frictions, whether when a person did Hagba and he pulled it too tight between the seams, or when it was rolled, again, unevenly, and now it's stretching incorrectly, those knots will start to crack, to break, to snap. To prevent that, we use a matla, which is basically parchment, and it's adhesively attached on top of that knot, again, giving it extra reinforcement to prevent that. So if, when you're rolling the Torah and the spotter says, oh, look at this one, it's coming off, make a note. We're having a problem here. It's right at the beginning of Deuteronomy. Dvarim, right over there, we have one of the matlesim coming off. This one fell off completely. Make sure that we have it moved. So that's that. I haven't seen any of the other scrolls. I'll have to see the other ones. Sometimes we can guide you in actually cleaning your drawers. Yours don't look too filthy then. That's really good.
Okay,
that's definitely a positive.
We haven't opened the travel one yet.
Okay, we'll take a look. But what happens is that often, as I said, once you have letters that start to crumble heavily, so that powder sits there and starts to rub more, and it creates like what we call black clouds of dirt, which make it practically impossible to read because it's covering over the script, but more importantly, it becomes an ongoing cause of damage to other letters. So how we clean it, we actually use a rubber. This looks like an eraser, but it's a special rubber, and this rubber is capable of removing dirt without removing the ink, without removing letters. So if you use just regular erasers that are a little bit more textured, it will actually, you start to clean it, you're pulling off letters, and you don't want that. Okay, but to remove dirt, I can clean some spot over here. I'll show you. That's a nice big one. Okay. Ready? Take a look.
Wow.
Wow. Isn't that unbelievable?
Unbelievable.
That is unbelievable. So what happens now is that whatever was loose is coming off. But now you know what they say. When you go to the doctor, he doesn't just start giving you medicine. He first has to examine and see what condition you are to give you the right. So in this case, to just write all the words. I'm not going to write a whole Torah, but now it can clearly identify what has to happen. See, and it just pulls off all the dirt. And so what was it pulling? What's this black? That's the ink that had crumbled that's rubbing on. That's what you were saying. So
this is just a regular eraser?
No.
Okay, got it.
That's what it is. And so this does not pull off ink, it only pulls off the dirt. And so the thing is, now, look at that. Other than the letters that some are browny, a little fading, whatever, but it's unbelievable.
Where can you get this?
No, you can get them on wherever.
Okay.
You get them. It's not a... Okay, but really, this is something that you can do now. If you do it too lightly, you're not going to do anything. Too hard, sometimes if you start doing it too hard, your fingers actually get down close and you're going to start rubbing it with your nails, and that's no good either. But just nice and firm, it just comes right on. Then we have brushes and,
So only over the letters, or would you want it on the...
You can. At the end of the day, the objective is for the letters to be seen. If it's dirty over here, that's not really bothering me as much. But surely, if I had the time, or if you're doing whatever, go to town, clean it up, and it'll actually. This is already a very old scroll, so this Torah is over 200 years old. But sometimes you have these scrolls that were written in Israel, 40, 50, 60 years ago, and they're filthy. And you clean it, and it looks like brand new again. So all that dirt that has been accumulating on top of the script can easily be removed. So,
can I take a photo of this?
Please do. Please do. Now, you will have to build up some good muscles over there to do a whole Torah, and I do it sometimes in a few hours. It's a major undertaking. But even if you do sections at a time, do one sheet. Your job is to do one sheet. That's it. You're doing a lot of good for that Torah. And that's something definitely worthwhile. Okay. Any questions? I know I've said a lot.
Is there any kind of prayer?
Very good. Very good. And in fact, when we send out the information about the holy rollers, we do give a whole procedure. And the first step is actually, it's not really a prayer. Okay? It's, a prayer has to do with fulfilling a mitzvah. So if you're making a prayer on the bread or whatever. But in this case, something slightly different. It's a proclamation that every sofer will say anytime they start to do any action related to Torah. And similar to when you eat and you say hamotzi, you don't say hamotzi before every bite. Okay? That would be a long meal. Right? But in this case, you say hamotzi once, and it covers the meal. So while you're involved in this meal, that you don't have to do it again. If you walked away and came back 2 hours later, no, you would have to make another blessing. Similarly here, as long as you're working on the Torah, you would say the statement once. And it's very simple. We say L'Shem, Mitzvat, Kedushat, Sefer, Torah. That's it. In other words, I am putting my mind into gear. And what's the gear? I'm about to perform an act with this holy Torah. It's a mitzvah of a Torah. I'm going to be involved in doing something to care for this Torah. And now I'm on a different playing field. Right? So I'm doing this for that purpose. Whether you take photos or not, whether you thank me or not, I'm doing it for the sake of the Torah. So it's more intellectually stimulating for the brain to know that you're doing something that's holy, and something that's special. And that's it. But that was a good one. Thank you for that.
So you mentioned already tears and smudges. Could you show us a little bit of what to look for in the letters in terms of if they're browning, fading?
Okay, so here's the thing. I saw here there's really bad thing. So here, clearly, it's all very obvious where letters have turned brown, and some of them are getting down here. You see that? And they're getting very light. Here, on the other hand, I cleaned it off, but still the ink is still nice and strong. And the sooner we remove that dirt, the longer those good letters that maybe have been damaged 10%, but now they'll last much longer versus just letting it sit, and then we're going to get these letters. Now, here's an important observation. Okay. There's primarily 2-3 categories halachically as far as letters go. Ink has to be black. How do we know that? It's called Halacha Moshe Sinai. This is one of those traditions that God gave to Moses, to the Jewish people, and for all these years we've been following that. Okay. Now, brown letters does not cause a Torah to be considered not kosher. Okay, so brown letters is still 100% fine. When does a Torah become unkosher? That now it's problematic as far as its kosher status. A, if the letter cracked, rubbed off, flaked off, and so on, so it's not there. Or if it's now turned from brown into fading and basically practically disappearing. Those are the only two concepts that will cause a Torah to be considered not kosher. If it has browning letters or it has like light crumbling, but the letters are still fully intact, it's still kosher. Now, here's a title which sometimes it will show up in my documents, and it's called Kosher B'di'evet. I'm not sure if any of you ever heard of the word B'di'evet before. It's a very important Jewish concept. Again, by way of an example, talking about bread, I'm going to ask you all a question. My guess you'll know the answer to this one. It's Friday night, and we're about to say we want to eat the challah, we want to make the blessing. Here are your two options. A, you pick up the challah, you make the blessing, and then you eat it. Or, you pick up the challah, you take a bite, and then you make the blessing. What's the correct way to do it? And you all know the answer to this. We all say the blessing first. That's the way it's done. I know you all know that. That's a concept that Judaism has instilled inside of us. But what happens, one Friday night, yours truly, I'm Moshe, I come to the table and I was starving. I wasn't thinking much. I picked up the challah and without thinking, I took a bite. Now comes the question to you. A, you missed it. You didn't say the blessing, too late. Or, make a blessing now. What's the answer? Make the blessing now. Okay? That is called B'di'evet. B'di'evet means past tense. There's a redeemable way to still fulfill the mitzvah, even though it's not the way you should do it to begin with. So if someone was watching me and said, oh, Rabbi Druin picked up, took a bite, then made a blessing, said, hey, Rabbi, is that the new law? No. I answer, that's B'di'evet. B'di'evet means this is not the way it should normally be, but it still passes as fulfilling the mitzvah of making a blessing when you eat. Back to our Torah now. B'di'evet means that it's not the way it necessarily should be, but it's definitely usable and you're fulfilling the mitzvah. So when you don't write Torahs with brown ink. Okay? So you say, oh, it only has to be black, so if it's brown, it's not kosher. No. B'di'evet, it still works. Okay? It becomes not suitable, not kosher any longer, when it's not even brown. It's faded and disappeared, or when two letters, or actually one letter split and became two letters, now it's not kosher. It's not what it was intended to be. So when we're looking out for letters, what I'm going to be at least quoting on this one, there are sections here that are really beautiful. Here we got a problem. As you can probably see already, just from that, without cleaning it yet. Once I start cleaning this, it'll clearly be that so many of these letters are practically not going to be there. On different levels. Okay, here. You see that? It's almost not there. You see that? Okay, so this is now, I have to calculate what it would take to fix everything, or only those specific letters that have disappeared and really are considered. I mean, in the technicality of it is, when you have majority white spaces versus the black of the ink, that also constitutes the B'di'evet into non-kosher as well. So it's calculated. But these are the issues that you'd be looking for. Here's another whole section of it. You see that? Where just so much of the ink has completely come off. So it can be re-inked to look again like this. At what cost? We'll find out. I don't know. Sometimes we turn around and say, let's just preserve its external condition, the stitching, the sheets, maybe just odd letters that really have, and just let it, retire gracefully. But we have to, I don't know how many sections are like this. Any other questions?
So when we're prepping for, hopefully our scrolls, at least someone will get on the Torah maintenance plan, when we're prepping for sofer to come and repair, what exactly are the process in terms of us making notes?
Right, so we do have the forms that you would, when you're going through the scrolls, to take notes of things. As far as I'm concerned, if you turned around and you found, what was that pay that we saw over here? The pay is over here, right? Alufei hachorit, right? Okay? Now, you want me to fix that one. A kid was reading, couldn't read it. Rabbi, we need to fix it next time you come. Okay? how are you going to mark this for me? All you need to do is this following. You have to write down on this chart that you'll be getting, Vayu B'nai Yaakov, you write the first 2 or 3 words of that column. You'll go ahead and write the first 1 or 2 words of that line, and I'll find it in the Torah within about 3 minutes, no matter where it is. So this way you're able to record where the problem is, so you may have 15 of them in different places. As long as I know the first few words of the column, a word or 2 of the line, it immediately will stand out whatever the problem may be. So that's something and it's just, it could be you, it could be a child, it could be anyone who's in charge of doing these things, is to be able to mark those things. Surely if you have any tears or rips and things like that you want to make note of, so you'll just say the top of the column, this one here, Set Tamim, right? You put it there and you'll be able to identify where the problem is. So that's that. I will say that while it's ideal, it's advantageous to roll the Torah once a month, not always is that something practically will communities always be able to fulfill. I will say that we've had communities that have used this as a really multiple opportunity here, where it wasn't just, volunteering, but sometimes it could be seniors and youngsters doing it together. It could be grandparents and grandchildren doing this together. Sometimes it could be the confirmation class. It's their honor for the year to be the holy rollers. Sometimes we've had communities where once every 6 months the rabbi pulls names out of the hat. We need 12 people or 15, whatever, and you are being honored to be the holy roller of this quarter, this half a year, and so on. You can print ties, you can put badges. It's a new, exciting way of getting people socially active and doing something together about Torah. So it's a lot of very interesting ways to do it. We have other ideas, which obviously we'll be sharing with you. I think exactly. Now we're getting color one.
So you're putting everybody in one line and everybody like Simchat Torah, like everybody.
No, on the table.
On the table.
On the table.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to do it on the table.
Do you use gloves?
Sorry?
Do you wear gloves?
Okay. Here's the thing. I don't use gloves. Now, let's just talk a minute about that. Okay, I was waiting for someone to talk about it, because I'm just handling the Torah and and some of you are like, what is that? Okay, let's talk about Jewish law. There is not any law proclaiming that you're not allowed to touch Torah. It doesn't say it anywhere.
I know, but it's not oil.
Oh, hold on. So the truth is, let's take it one step even more. It's only when you touch Torah will Torah touch you. So touching Torah is beautiful and important. But now here comes the issue. So you say, so if that's the case, why do we use the yad in the first place, right? And the answer is, it's similar to having a fence around a pool, right? Why? My pool, why is the Shabbat stopping me, preventing me from going to the pool? We say, no. If you're 2 years old or if you're drunk, you shouldn't be there. But if you know how to swim, open the gate and go in, right? Similarly, everyone's allowed to touch Torah, but because we're not sure who knows how to handle Torah, we say, I'm not too sure. We just said, let's make life easy. No one should touch it. Just use the yad, and we won't have to start saying you can't, you have to. Okay. But when it comes to actually rolling Torah, the issue is not as best as possible to actually touch the script. That's the most dangerous part. That if you know how, even then you can, but rather not. But touching the parchment by all means. So when you're rolling the Torah and fixing the edges and so on, there's no problem whatsoever. If you have a little issue of getting your hands dirty, so put on gloves.
You wet.
Yeah. There's a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. More concerned about Torah.
Yeah. Correct.
I want to ask a silly question, very tachlis. So when we have all the Torahs rolled like this.
No, it wouldn't be rolled like this. Basically, it would be a Torah where one's holding a handle on this side, and the other person, whether it's one table or 2 tables, they're standing, and it's only rolled open this. And you're going to be rolling it up, and they're letting it out. And you're just keeping the scroll rolled, and every once in a while you stop, you hold it, and you tighten it up, and it's okay, let loose, and you keep on rolling it. The idea is to give it air, the spotter is looking out for things, and that's it. I'm doing this because I'm only one person by myself. I can't do both sides at the same time. So I just roll it out. I'm able to roll back a Torah within about 30 seconds if I want to. I'm very quick on that. But just allowing it to breathe is really the most important thing.
I feel like there's a video on your YouTube page.
There
of
is.
You rolling something. Yeah. Check it out. It's very impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
So you said that there's not a lot of people who are doing this.
Right.
Are there younger people? What happens someday?
Again, not many of us. It's
Right.
not, it's a very unique.
How made you decide to become a sofer?
Okay, here comes my quick story. How much time do I have? No. It's a good story. It's a good story. I've been an artist since the age of about 6, 7 years old. I grew up in Israel. My Hebrew is much better than my English. In fact, as I'm speaking, I'm constantly translating from Hebrew into English. And not observant, growing up in the north of Israel. And I must have been about 8 years old or something, and a photocopy of the Hebrew letters, as they appear in the Torah, ended up somehow on my desk. And it was love at first sight. I was mesmerized by their shapes, the crowns, the angles, and all. And while everyone in the class was scribbling scribbles, I was scribbling Hebrew letters. Jump ahead 10 years later, and I'm getting a little bit more involved in my Judaism. I'm in yeshiva, and I became the cartoonist for the yeshiva. And, drawing funny faces and all. Came Purim, and I drew all the rabbis and teachers in slightly compromising positions. They threw me out. I was a very good student, never caused any problems, but that when I crossed the red line, they brought me back, and they said, Moshe, you should become the ultimate Jewish artist. You should become a scribe. I said, you got to be holy, you got to work it. And I was a fish in water. I mean, normally it could take, individuals I've trained, I teach scribes. It could take years. Within 3 months, I was already writing my first Megillah. So I was very quick, very into it almost immediately, and I haven't looked back. Although I've worn many other hats. I was both a rabbi for 12 years, and principal of Jewish day schools, building theme parks. I was in South Africa. I did a lot of interesting things in my career, but this I've always been involved with. So there you go.
Where can you learn this?
There's only one way: an apprentice. There's no other way. And most scribes are not even capable, qualified, knowledgeable to teach. So it's not an easy, but that's the only way to do it. I mean, you can learn the laws over here, you can look online that, but to really learn the art of how it's done, the nuances and all, and that's always the way it's done. But there's a beautiful concept to it. So if you think of it, I learned from my teacher. So who taught my teacher?
His teacher.
And who taught his teacher? His teacher. And who was the first teacher? It was old Moses. Right? And who taught Moses? So if you think of it, I'm in God's profession. A little respect, please. A little respect.
Good guilt.
You have a union.
There you go. Okay. The Seligam, where I'll be sending, obviously we have a lot of good information and material to share. But it's a beautiful thing. And taking care of Torah as you come home. What did you do today? I took care of a Torah. I mean, it's like, wow. That's it's a very special thing to be able to be counted as one of the Torah guardians. There you go.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.